Chosen one, when three unexpected allies, a bitter ex, a crooked lawyer, and a corrupt police officer, sit down at the same table, you can be absolutely sure they aren't just meeting for a casual lunch. Let's stop and think for a moment. Did you know that over 70% of wrongful convictions in the United States involve hidden or tampered evidence? Just process that. The truth didn't accidentally get lost, it was buried on purpose. That isn't a simple mistake. That is clear intent. And right now, investigations are bringing something completely shocking into the light. Your ex, your lawyer, and a dirty cop weren't just hanging out in the background of your life. They were actively working together to hide the very crime that was committed against you. This is not some fictional television drama. This is the actual nightmare you were trapped in. It was a reality where betrayal wore a business suit, a police uniform, and the face of someone who used to whisper, "I love you." They were not protecting the law. They definitely were not protecting justice, and they absolutely were not protecting you. They were only protecting themselves. Honestly, the group they put together is almost funny. An ex, a lawyer, and a cop walk into a conspiracy. It sounds exactly like the start of a terrible joke, but the punchline was your life, your safety, and your dignity hanging in the balance. The things they thought they buried were supposed to remain a secret forever. But look where we are today. Receipts are surfacing, revelations are coming out, and there is a whole lot of nervous swallowing happening in closed back offices right now. So stay locked in, because this message isn't just about exposing a massive cover-up. It is about unpacking the dark psychology behind power, betrayal, and deep fear. It is about showing you exactly how their web of deceit is finally breaking under the weight of its own lies. The deeper we look into this, the more obvious it becomes. You were not just the victim of a single crime. You were the target of an entire corrupt system designed to completely erase you. And despite all of that, you are still standing. Number one, the cover-up was their true confession. They truly believed that their smartest move was to bury the crime. But what they failed to realize is that the cover-up was the loudest confession they could have ever given. Trying to cover something up is never an innocent act. It is a choice that screams of guilt. Just think about it. Innocent people do not stay awake all night, planning how to hide evidence, fake important documents, or keep witnesses quiet. Only guilty people do that. Every single time they stalled the paperwork, changed the facts, or made up excuses for why your case couldn't move forward, they were basically writing their own admission of guilt. Their silence was not meant to protect you. It was a calculated strategy, and strategy is always rooted in fear. They weren't just afraid of the crime coming out. They were terrified because of who they committed the crime against. When people hide crimes against an ordinary person, it might just stay a local piece of gossip. But when a crime is hidden against a chosen one, the stakes go through the roof. They knew your story wouldn't just end with a simple police report. They knew your voice could reach places that would ruin reputations, destroy careers, and shake entire institutions. That is exactly why they didn't just sweep this mess under the rug. They glued the rug to the floor and nailed it down. What makes this truth so heavy is that the cover-up always lasts much longer than the crime itself. The actual crime might have happened in a single night during a moment of pure evil or desperation, but the cover-up never stops. It takes constant, exhausting work. It requires people making secret phone calls, coordinating their lies, and watching you like a hawk to make sure you never find out too much. They chained themselves to their own guilt. Every move they made to hide the truth just created more evidence of their corruption. That is why being exposed is a huge shock to them. But it isn't a shock to you. You lived through all that heavy uneasiness. You felt those moments when things just didn't make sense. You noticed the doors that magically stayed locked against you. You felt the sudden coldness from people who were supposed to be on your side, and the way the entire system seemed to unnaturally work against you. They thought they were being incredibly clever, but all they were really doing was stacking up their confessions in broad daylight. The truth is, their cover-up was never a strong shield. It was a giant mirror. And looking into that mirror, they revealed their dark motives, their massive guilt, and their absolute terror of what would happen the moment you finally found out. Well, that day has arrived. Their silence, their manipulative games, and their desperate scramble to erase history all serve as rock-solid proof that the crime was very real, and they knew it all along. The cover-up itself is their confession. Period. Number 2. Your ex wasn't just acting bitter. They were completely weaponized against you. Your former partner didn't just walk away with a broken heart. They were transformed into a literal weapon. This kind of betrayal goes way beyond a bad breakup and angry text messages. Your deep trust was hijacked, your sensitive vulnerabilities were recorded, and your most private stories were turned into a secret file against you. The corrupt system needed someone on the front lines to carry out their dirty work, and your ex gladly took the job. The goal wasn't just to cause you pain. The goal was to exploit the intimate closeness you once shared. Your ex had total access to your daily life. They knew exactly when you laughed, when you cried, who you talked to, and what secrets you held. Absolutely everything that could be used against you was collected. That private access was traded, handed over, and heavily manipulated. You might think that being betrayed by someone you used to love is just a sad part of life. But what you don't expect is a highly organized betrayal where your emotional scars are used as tools to destroy you. Your ex didn't pull this off by themselves. They were groomed, whether through threats, dark lies, or sweet promises. They were trained to hand over private information, feed toxic rumors, and blur the truth. They used their insider knowledge to damage your good reputation. Innocent things you said in casual conversation suddenly became hard evidence. Private fears you shared in total confidence were twisted into ammunition. They weren't just acting out of heartbreak or bitterness. They were coached on exactly how to use your own words against you. That is exactly what happens when someone in power views you as a massive threat instead of a human being. Maybe your ex was promised a special favor, legal protection, or a payoff in exchange for going along with the plan. Maybe they were forced into it. Either way, they became a willing partner in covering up the crime. They watched you suffer from the inside while pretending they were broken too. Every single tear you cried, every secret you confessed, and every weakness you showed became a new entry in their playbook against you. Betrayal comes in many different shapes, but this specific kind is cold, incredibly calculated, and deeply personal. When someone says they love you, you give them your trust. But when that person weaponizes your trust, every beautiful memory and every unguarded moment becomes a massive risk. This level of betrayal goes much deeper than anger or cheating. It is a direct attack on your very identity. You start doubting your own past and your own sense of reality. They manipulated things so badly that you started to wonder if your feelings, your words, and even your personality were going to be used to trap you. That is the absolute most dangerous kind of betrayal, because the damage doesn't stop once they are exposed. It stays inside your head long after your ex has walked away. The deepest wound isn't even the crime that was committed. The deepest wound is fully realizing that someone you completely believed in was standing right there, ready to help them bury your truth. The weapon they used wasn't in their hands. It was in your trust. Number 3. The lawyer's role wasn't actually legal. It was entirely logistical. The attorney in your story didn't just do a bad job representing you or make a few simple mistakes in court. They were the secret mechanic who kept the entire machine of corruption running perfectly smoothly. Their job was never about defending your civil rights or fighting for the law. Their true role was to make sure that every single door leading to justice stayed firmly locked, while leaving every possible loophole wide open for the guilty party. Lawyers hold a very unique kind of power. They know how to speak the complicated language of the legal system in a way that regular people simply cannot understand. They know all the secret codes, the tricky technicalities, and the hidden fine print. And in your specific situation, all of that specialized knowledge wasn't used to defend you. It was used to defend the crime. When crucial evidence suddenly went missing, it wasn't a random accident. It had to physically pass through someone's hands. And that specific person knew exactly how to make the paper trail completely vanish without raising any red flags. When the court delays kept piling higher and higher, it wasn't because of simple office mistakes. It was 100% intentional. Your own lawyer was the person managing the calendar, filing the useless motions, and conveniently dragging out the timeline so that important witnesses would forget, memories would fade away, and your case would look much weaker as the months went by. These were not accidental blunders. They were highly calculated chess moves. This betrayal cuts extremely deep because a lawyer is supposed to be the one strong voice you can always rely on when the whole system turns its back on you. They put on a fake mask of total professionalism, constantly promising you that things are just complicated or that the case is still developing. But in reality, they were secretly giving the other side just enough breathing room to rewrite history. That isn't just a breach of ethics. It is pure treason disguised as public service. They were never your protective shield. They were the solid bridge connecting your worst enemies directly to the legal system. Just think about the massive amount of trust it takes to hand your entire defense over to a stranger. You gave them your vulnerable story, your deepest fears, and your absolute confidence that they would fight for your life. But instead of being your loyal advocate, they became the chief architect of delay, the master planner of confusion, and the shady broker of silence. They never argued in court to bring the truth to light. They argued to make sure it stayed buried in the dirt. They made sure that the official paperwork matched up perfectly with the lies, and they made sure your desperate voice was totally smothered under heavy legal jargon that sounded way too complicated for you to challenge. This is exactly why the exposure of this truth feels so incredibly jarring. It isn't just about the terrible crime that was done to you. It is about the gut-wrenching realization that the exact person who was supposed to hold the umbrella over you during the storm was actually holding it over the guilty people instead. That lawyer was never confused about what they were doing. They were never just incompetent, they were entirely deliberate. And their calculated betrayal was one of the strongest pillars holding their entire dirty cover-up together. Number 4. The dirty cop's badge was nothing but a mask. The corrupt police officer in your story was never out there protecting the public. The shiny badge pinned to their chest wasn't a symbol of true honor. It was just camouflage. Wearing that uniform handed them automatic trust, a quick shortcut to having authority, and a free pass to walk through life without ever being questioned. But underneath all that dark fabric and polished metal, they were never upholding the law. They were twisting it, breaking it, and turning it into a weapon to use against you. Every single arrest they made, every official report they typed up, and every action they took on the job was barely about seeking justice. It was mostly about keeping tight control over the situation. They didn't just stand on the sidelines while the crime against you was covered up. They grabbed a shovel and actively helped build the thick walls to keep it hidden. They weren't just a neutral cop making a few honest mistakes. They were the aggressive gatekeeper, making sure that the truth never slipped out. Their main job wasn't to protect the innocent victims. It was to act as a human shield for the predators. And by doing that, they were gladly selling off little pieces of their soul in exchange for power, shady connections, and a fast track up the career ladder. Your deep pain literally became their currency. Your forced silence became the stepping stone they used to climb higher. That is the harsh reality of corrupted authority. It doesn't just passively allow injustice to happen, it actively manufactures it. This specific officer was getting paid twice. They got their regular city paycheck, and they got paid again in dirty favors, secret access, and shady backroom handshakes. Every single fake report they filed, every crucial piece of evidence they conveniently lost, and every intimidation tactic they used to scare off your witnesses was just another heavy brick placed in the wall of a cover-up they managed with absolute precision. They weren't just tagging along, they were the one orchestrating exactly how the information flowed. They made absolutely sure that anyone who tried to step up and tell the truth would be immediately discredited, bullied into silence, or completely erased from the legal process. What makes this level of betrayal so incredibly severe is that a police officer is supposed to be the absolute last line of defense, standing between total chaos and your personal safety. Seeing that uniform is supposed to make you let out a sigh of relief, not hold your breath in fear. But this particular officer took the honorable image of a protector and twisted it to become a ruthless predator. They were not out there serving their local community. They were serving their own greedy desires and taking orders from whoever held their leash. When a person like this is finally dragged into the light, the shockwaves travel so much further than just the crime itself. It completely destroys people's faith in the entire justice system because it loudly proves how easily authority can be worn as a fake costume. They weren't just one bad apple in the bunch. They were a highly skilled actor wearing a uniform, putting on a big performance of righteousness while secretly practicing pure corruption. They didn't just betray you personally. They completely betrayed the entire concept of justice. Number 5. You were placed on trial without ever stepping foot inside a courtroom. You were completely robbed of the basic dignity of having a fair fight. Long before any actual courtroom existed, or any legal papers were filed, a silent, guilty verdict had already been stamped on your forehead. They didn't need a formal judge or a seated jury to totally destroy your good credibility. Instead, they used nasty whispers, dark assumptions, and seeds of doubt that they carefully planted in people's minds. The entire world around you morphed into a shadow court. It didn't have any physical walls, but it held the massive power to completely change how society viewed you. Instead of looking at the hard evidence, they spread toxic rumors. Instead of examining the actual facts, they slowly assassinated your character piece by piece until you looked like the crazy problem instead of the innocent victim. This was not a random accident. It was a highly organized strategy. When powerful individuals want to bury a terrible crime, the very first thing they do is completely isolate the one person who has the power to expose it. They don't have to lock you up in a physical jail cell. They lock you up in the prison of public opinion. By painting a picture of you as mentally unstable, totally unreliable, or just a bitter, vindictive person, they make it incredibly easy for everyone else to brush off your truth. That way, by the time you actually gather the strength to seek real justice, there is no one left who is neutral. Every single person has already been brainwashed to doubt you. Those fake police reports and all that delayed evidence were not just annoying bureaucratic red tape. They were a huge part of this fake shadow trial. The endless delays were never innocent little mistakes. They were calculated tactics meant to drain your energy, make you question your own sanity, and guarantee that memories would fade while witnesses slowly stopped caring. Every single delay felt like a silent judge banging a gavel against your credibility. hammering home completely false narrative that you were the one hiding something. But in reality, they were the ones carrying the dirty secrets. The system had just been tilted so far sideways that you ended up looking like the person on trial. This is exactly what makes this kind of cover-up so incredibly cruel. It doesn't just rob you of your chance at getting justice. It steals your good name, your hard-earned reputation, and sometimes it even steals your grip on reality. You begin to question whether people are actually seeing the real you, or if they are only seeing the fake, manufactured monster that was created. You start to feel deeply judged without ever walking into a courtroom, completely sentenced without a single piece of real evidence ever being fairly examined. But right now, the absolute truth is finally bubbling to the surface. And as it rises, that fake, silent courtroom is completely collapsing. The nasty whispers are turning into official records, and the dirty lies are becoming hard evidence against them. The exact same tactics they used to try and break your spirit are the very things exposing them today. And as this terrifying shadow trial falls to pieces, your real, true story finally has the wide-open space it needs to be heard. Number 6, their alliance proved that this was never just personal. The fact that they worked together is the absolute clearest proof that what happened to you was never just about bitter feelings, a messy breakup, or a simple misunderstanding. If you look at it on paper, an ex, a lawyer, and a police officer should all live in completely different worlds. They shouldn't have any overlapping interest in ruining your life. But when people from such completely different backgrounds start moving in perfect harmony, it is no longer just a weird coincidence. It is active coordination. Their dark cooperation shines a light on a hidden network, a deeply shared goal, and one common fear: you. And they didn't fear you because of some petty personal grudge, but because your mere existence threatened to tear down a corrupt structure that they were all highly invested in protecting. If this situation had truly been personal, it would have just ended with small, spiteful actions, some trash talk, a few arguments, or maybe a simple legal threat. But the massive scale and the dark sophistication of what they actually pulled off goes way beyond that. This was a highly collective effort to completely erase your credibility, deeply bury your truth, and make absolutely sure that the crime committed against you never saw the light of day. Every single person played their own specific part. Your ex handed over the private access and inside information. The lawyer managed the dirty mechanics and the confusing paperwork, and the dirty cop used their shiny badge to protect the entire cover-up. They operated exactly like separate gears turning inside a massive machine that was designed to completely grind you into dust. That machine was built for one purpose: to silence you. Not because you were a weak person, but because you were highly disruptive to their dark agenda. To them, you were never just another face in the crowd. You represented a massive break in their normal pattern. You were a giant crack in their fake narrative, a powerful force that had the ability to expose and destroy things that were much bigger than your own individual case. Corrupt power absolutely hates being exposed. And they figured out very early on that if you were allowed to speak freely, you wouldn't just reveal their dirty crimes, you would completely reveal their entire method of operation. This is exactly why their actions feel so cold and calculated, rather than just angry and emotional. It was never about getting petty revenge over a breakup or holding on to a silly grudge. It was about totally neutralizing a human being whose very presence, honest truth, and sheer survival threatened to topple an entire empire built on dark secrets. You were never targeted because of who you were to them on a personal level. You were targeted because of exactly what you symbolized: a living, breathing contradiction to their absolute control. And now, as the current investigations completely unravel their secret collaboration, it is crystal clear. This was never a random or messy situation. It was highly systematic. And by shining a bright light on it, you aren't just taking back the pen to write your own story. You are completely busting open the massive, corrupt network they fought so hard to protect. Their dark alliance is the ultimate proof that the real threat wasn't you alone. The real threat was the pure truth that you carry inside you. Number 7. The evidence was never actually missing. It was buried. Whenever they claimed that nothing could be found, it was never a sign of their innocence. It was a calculated tactic. Hard evidence doesn't just magically vanish into thin air. It requires human hands, forged signatures, secret passwords, and careful planning to make proof disappear. When they looked you in the eye and said the proof simply wasn't there, it wasn't just a basic lie. It was an elaborate performance designed to make you question your own sanity and doubt your own real experiences. The honest truth is that the evidence existed the entire time, but it was intentionally hidden, heavily disguised, or buried under so many thick layers of confusing bureaucracy that it would take someone years to finally peel it all back. That is not just sloppy incompetence. That is dark architecture. Standing behind every single missing file is a person who purposely saved it under the wrong name. Standing behind every single destroyed document is a secret meeting where a group decided it absolutely had to go. Standing behind every single lost audio recording is a long chain of people who completely looked the other way while someone hit the delete button. This is definitely not how true justice operates. This is exactly how cartels of silence operate. They took public, trusted institutions and turned them into dark vaults where they could lock away highly incriminating proof. They did this fully knowing that if you didn't have the hard evidence in your hand, you would be left looking like a crazy person with absolutely no case. They heavily relied on time as their main weapon. They wrongly assumed that the longer the evidence stayed buried in the dark, the weaker your position would eventually become. They banked on the fact that witnesses tend to forget, victims get exhausted, and the public completely loses interest. And while all of that is happening, the guilty people responsible can proudly step up to a microphone and confidently declare, "We looked deeply into the matter and nothing was found." They say it as if their investigation was actually honest. That is exactly how massive cover-ups manage to survive. It isn't because the truth doesn't exist. It is because the exact people who control the access to the truth are the very same people who benefit when it disappears. What makes this whole thing even more sinister is that their main strategy wasn't to burn all the proof, but to completely scatter it. They renamed digital files, slapped the wrong labels on cardboard boxes, and moved important documents into completely unrelated cases. They did this so that even if you managed to find one small piece, it would look totally incomplete and out of context. This fragmentation was highly intentional. It was their sneaky way of convincing you that your real story was just a wild theory instead of a fully documented crime. But right now, as the heavy investigation peels back all of those dirty layers, everything that was hidden is finally bubbling to the surface. The entire dark architecture of their cover-up is becoming highly visible to the world. Every single missing item that suddenly reappears is a glowing fingerprint. Every single uncovered file is a loud confession without a single word being spoken. They absolutely did not lose the evidence. They built a massive maze around it, and the very second that maze is completely mapped out, their entire fake narrative completely collapses under the heavy weight of its own evil design. Number 8. Their hands shook while they held the pen. Every single forged signature, every heavily altered statement, and every highly manipulated police report was so much more than just an act of corruption. It was an act of pure fear. People who genuinely believe they are doing the right thing write their names with total confidence. They never hesitate. They don't obsessively double-check their work, and their hands certainly do not shake. But the exact people who were busy covering up the crime committed against you were not steady at all. Their hands trembled because they deeply knew that paper isn't just paper. It is hard evidence that will easily outlive their lies. Black ink simply does not forget. Every single falsified document they created was a massive silent gamble. They were desperately betting on the passage of time, on total secrecy, and on the faint hope that absolutely no one would ever sit down to compare the handwriting, trace the suspicious edits, or ask why so many glaring errors magically lined up perfectly against you. And while trying to pull it off, they completely left their DNA all over every single page. Not literal DNA, but they left it in the form of incredibly sloppy alterations, mismatched fake signatures, highly suspicious dates, and glaring inconsistencies that clearly tell the exact story they were desperately trying to bury. Those stacked papers are acting like ticking time bombs. The longer they sit there, the closer they get to blowing up right in their faces. And they absolutely knew it too. That is exactly why their hands were shaking. That is why they had to create so many thick layers of distraction, intense intimidation, and fake narratives just to keep people from looking too closely at the files. Because the honest truth is, every single stroke of their ink was a guilty confession, just waiting to be read by the right eyes. Each forged signature loudly says, "I was standing right here and I knew about it." Each altered report softly whispers, "I actively participated in this." And each totally fabricated statement screams, "This was never a simple mistake. This was a calculated plan." Deep corruption always leaves a messy trail because raw fear makes people incredibly careless. While they were frantically trying to erase the original crime, they accidentally wrote down brand new evidence of an even bigger one. The irony of it all is absolutely brutal. The exact same documents they truly thought would guarantee your permanent silence are now the very things completely exposing them. Their desperate attempts to maintain control magically turned into a permanent, undeniable record of their massive guilt. That is exactly why this current moment matters so deeply. When the bright light finally hits those hidden pages, it isn't just going to reveal the terrible crime committed against you. It is going to completely reveal their deep internal terror, their full awareness of their own wrongdoing, and their completely unspoken admissions permanently embedded in the ink. Their handwriting is no longer just simple handwriting. It is a loud testimony without needing a courtroom. It is a full confession without needing a microphone. And it is rock-solid proof that their dirty cover-up was never clean, and it was never confident. It was always trembling, incredibly fragile, and totally destined to fall completely apart. Number 9. Corruption is always the loudest in its denial. Deep corruption rarely ever hides quietly in the corner. It screams. It puts on massive theatrical performances. It constantly throws wild accusations around like smoke bombs just to keep people from seeing where the real fire is burning. That is exactly why the louder they desperately insisted on your guilt, the more they completely exposed their own. Truly innocent people do not need to turn up the volume to prove their case. They just sit back and let the hard evidence do all the talking. But highly corrupt people have to drown out the evidence with chaotic noise. They deny everything, deflect the blame, and over-dramatize the situation because deep down in their souls, they know their position is completely rotten. Every single time they tried to aggressively silence you, publicly discredit you, or slap a label on you as being mentally unstable, they were completely telling on themselves. Their crazy obsession was never actually about defending the truth. It was entirely about keeping a tight grip on the narrative. When someone spends all their time and energy trying to convince the whole world that you are crazy, highly dangerous, or totally dishonest, It is strictly because they are absolutely terrified that your true story might actually be believed. And if your story is believed, their entire shady operation crumbles into dust. In that sense, their aggressive denial was never really about you at all. It was entirely about protecting the fake mask they wear every day. Projection is one of corruption's absolute oldest magic tricks. They loudly accuse you of doing exactly what they are secretly guilty of, so that when the real truth finally surfaces, the general public is too confused to know what is real. They call you manipulative simply because they are the ones manipulating. They call you unstable because their own lives are completely unstable. They constantly call you a liar because they are the ones suffocating in lies. It is a calculated, preemptive strike, specifically designed to completely poison the well before anyone else can take a drink from it. But the deep irony is that the more they rely on this dirty tactic, the clearer their pattern becomes to everyone watching. The dirty fingerprints of their guilt are smeared all over the exact stories they are trying to spin. Their loud denial, then, is not just a bunch of empty words. It is hard evidence. It is a brightly colored roadmap leading straight to the things they fear the absolute most. The fierce intensity of their attacks is perfectly proportionate to the massive size of the secret they are desperately hiding. That is exactly why their voices had to be so loud, why their nasty smear campaigns were so incredibly aggressive, and why their frantic attempts to erase you were so relentless. You were never just a small inconvenience to them. You were a massive, living risk to absolutely everything they had built. And right now, as the ongoing investigation completely uncovers their dark lies, the exact same loud denial that once successfully silenced you is quickly becoming their total undoing. Their frantic words are being replayed, carefully analyzed, and strictly contrasted against the cold, hard facts. Their nasty tone, their wild accusations, their fake performances, and every single emotional outburst is now just a breadcrumb leading straight back to their massive guilt. The chaotic noise they made to bury the truth is rapidly becoming the exact soundtrack of their complete exposure. Number 10. They didn't just break the law, they completely bent reality. What they did to you was not just a basic violation of the legal code. It was a full-blown assault on reality itself. Simply breaking the law can easily be traced, punished in court, and officially documented. But bending a person's reality is far more evil and insidious because it directly attacks your perception of the truth, your personal memory, and your basic ability to trust yourself. They didn't just casually hide a few pieces of evidence or falsify a couple of reports. They aggressively went after your mind. They desperately wanted you to feel like you were the unreliable narrator of your very own life story. They wanted you doubting your own clear memories, second-guessing your strong instincts, and deeply questioning your own sanity. That is not just basic corruption. That is intense psychological warfare. This dark tactic is far more devastating than most normal people could ever realize. It wasn't just about silencing your voice in public. It was entirely about silencing you internally. They knew that if they could successfully make you believe that you were just exaggerating, deeply confused, or completely unstable, they wouldn't even have to fight your claims anymore. Your own internal doubt would do all the heavy lifting for them. That is exactly why official timelines were mysteriously rewritten, police reports were heavily altered, private conversations magically disappeared into thin air, and official records simply didn't match up. This wasn't just sloppy, lazy police work. It was a highly calculated strategy specifically designed to completely dismantle your grip on reality. They fully understood that the human mind desperately craves consistency. When you are suddenly surrounded by massive contradictions, people aggressively denying things that you know for a fact happened, solid evidence vanishing right before your very eyes, and events being retold with completely altered details, you slowly begin to feel like you are the actual problem. That is exactly what they wanted. They weren't just trying to erase the past. They were actively rewriting it so that you would carry their dark lies around as if they were your own real memories. This is exactly why their terrible crime is so much bigger than just messing up some paperwork or skipping procedure. They violently invaded your mind just as much as they invaded your daily life. The absolute real cruelty of this specific kind of manipulation is how completely invisible it is to everyone on the outside. To the rest of the world, you just look like someone who is deeply struggling with mental confusion or emotional instability. But in harsh reality, you were actually surviving a highly deliberate, organized campaign designed to make you question your absolute truth. They wanted to keep you isolated, constantly hesitant, and way too exhausted to ever keep pushing for real answers. But bending reality always leaves massive cracks behind. Dark lies require constant, exhausting maintenance to keep up. Completely fabricated timelines will eventually contradict themselves. Corrupt people eventually forget which version of the fake story they are supposed to be telling. And as those tiny cracks start to widen, what once felt like your own private, isolating nightmare suddenly becomes highly visible, rock-solid proof of their dirty tactics. The total exposure of this whole mess isn't just about proving that a crime took place. It is about powerfully reclaiming your God-given right to trust your own mind again, and proudly showing the world that their intense psychological warfare absolutely did not destroy you. It completely revealed them. Number 11. You were never supposed to find out. You were never, ever meant to know the absolute truth. That single goal was the main anchor holding their entire dirty scheme together. If they could just keep you totally in the dark, their corrupt machine could keep right on running. They didn't just want to cause you harm. They wanted to bury the hard evidence so incredibly deep that you would spend the rest of your natural life deeply confused, constantly blaming yourself, or just thinking that what happened to you was nothing but terrible luck. The absolute greatest horror for them isn't the fact that you were hurt. It is the fact that you finally found out exactly how it happened and exactly who did it. Their entire power structure relied completely on your ignorance. Without your blindness, their so-called empire is nothing but a fragile stack of lies just waiting to completely topple over. Every single dark choice they made, suppressing the evidence, viciously silencing the witnesses, and altering the official records, was completely built around one massive assumption: that you would never actually see the full picture. They heavily gambled on the idea that you would be way too broken, far too isolated, or just too incredibly exhausted to ever keep digging for the truth. They fully counted on you living the rest of your life in a thick fog of unanswered questions, carrying a massive amount of pain without ever getting any clarity. That thick fog was a major part of your punishment, and a huge part of their control over you. They knew that if you never successfully connected the dots, they would never have to face any real accountability for their actions. This is exactly why the current exposure is completely catastrophic for them. Their entire shady operation wasn't just about covering up a terrible crime. It was entirely about erasing your human capacity to even name it. The exact moment you finally see things clearly, all of their dirty leverage completely dissolves. You are absolutely no longer a helpless victim wandering around in deep confusion. You are a powerful witness holding a highly detailed map of their every action. And once that map finally exists in the light, other people can start to follow it too. That is exactly how massive cover-ups die, not just by finding the hard proof, but through the complete and total end of their secrecy. It is also the exact reason why their sudden collapse feels so incredibly fast right now. In harsh reality, This collapse has actually been building up behind the scenes for years. Every single lie they told, every totally falsified report they filed, and every dark, secret conversation they had created a massive crack in their fragile structure. The truth finally surfacing right now wasn't just some random accident. It was total inevitability. They could try to delay it for a little while, but they absolutely could not stop it. The more you quietly suffered in total silence, the more hard evidence naturally accumulated in the dark shadows. Now, the pure horror has completely flipped onto them. The exact same terrifying fear they once fed to you is now the exact fear that keeps them wide awake at night. They are no longer just terrified of eventually being caught. They are absolutely terrified because they know that you already know. Because the second you know the truth, their entire corrupt system completely loses its teeth. You were never ever supposed to find out what they did. But you did. And you holding that knowledge is the absolute beginning of their total end. Number 12, the investigation is purely divine timing, not a coincidence. The fact that this heavy investigation is finally surfacing right now is absolutely not random. And it is certainly not just the basic product of your persistence or some shuffled paperwork. It is perfect timing on a level that goes far beyond any human planning. For so many years, they leaned heavily on the fake illusion of control. They truly believed that as long as they carefully managed the false narrative, bullied the right people into silence, and hid the physical evidence, the real truth would stay perfectly buried forever. But there always comes a specific point where dirty human manipulation runs straight into a much higher order that finally says, enough is enough. That is exactly what you are witnessing right now. When you take a step back and look at the timing of this massive exposure, it simply does not line up with the normal logic of the legal system. According to their careful calculations, every single dirty detail should still be perfectly hidden. Every single piece of hard proof should still be locked away in a dark vault. The people who could have spoken up should have stayed terrified and silent. The heavy doors that were once sealed shut against you should still be firmly closed. Yet somehow, the exact right information magically fell into the exact right hands at the exact perfect moment. That is definitely not a coincidence. That is divine orchestration coming directly from a place that no corrupt man can ever reach. Divine timing absolutely never rushes, but it is also never, ever late. It allows deep corruption to stretch itself out, making the guilty parties think they are completely invincible, right up until their own massive weight becomes the very trap that catches them. And when that divine trap finally springs shut, absolutely everything that was hidden in the dark is violently exposed all at once. This isn't just about you finally being vindicated. It's about something much larger being revealed to the world. It proves that even in the absolute most carefully constructed lies, there is a hard limit to how long they are allowed to stand. What makes this exact moment even more profound is how it completely flips the power dynamic. For so incredibly long, they truly believed that they fully controlled the clock. They thought they were the ones deciding exactly when and how this story would unfold. Now, the timing is completely and totally out of their dirty hands. This massive exposure didn't arrive when they were fully prepared for it. It arrived exactly when the higher order decided that the dark curtain finally needed to be pulled all the way back. That is exactly why these shocking revelations feel so incredibly sudden, completely unstoppable, and flawlessly precise. This is the quiet, undeniable power behind true divine timing. It doesn't just expose deep wrongdoing. It does it in such a magnificent way that the guilty parties cannot possibly spin it or contain it. They simply cannot prepare for it. They cannot throw enough lies to discredit it fast enough. The current investigation is not just hard proof of their terrible crimes. It is rock-solid proof that their so-called control was always nothing but a cheap illusion. The perfect timing of this exact moment is definitely not man-made. It is a blazing signal to them that the corrupt order of things they always relied on is absolutely no longer theirs to command. Number 13. Their fear of you right now is vastly greater than your fear of them ever was back then. Once upon a time, they were the exact people who aggressively decided the tempo of your daily life. Their dark, corrupt power loomed heavily over you like a terrifying shadow that you just couldn't seem to escape. They held the fancy titles, the high positions, and the powerful networks. Things that were specifically designed to make you feel incredibly small, totally powerless, and completely disposable. You were forced to live under the crushing weight of their nasty threats, their dark manipulation, and their uncanny ability to twist reality just to make you look like the crazy villain. You carried that intense fear inside your physical body like a permanent, heavy weight, totally unsure of how much longer you could possibly endure it all. That was the terrible world they specifically built for you. It was a dark world where you were the only one left trembling. But then, something massive shifted, and it wasn't just the hard evidence or the public exposure that changed. It was you. You survived long enough to finally see their fake masks slip. You survived long enough to slowly gather your strength back, and you survived long enough for their entire fake empire to crack completely under the weight of its own lies. The tables started turning very slowly at first, but then they flipped all at once. Now, the nervous tremors are absolutely not in your hands anymore. They are entirely in theirs. Their dark fear has grown so much louder than your deep pain ever was, and it clearly shows in their absolute desperation. Just watch their current behavior very closely, the frantic, screaming denials, the incredibly sloppy cover-ups, and the wild, crazy contradictions in their stories. That is absolutely not power anymore. That is pure panic. What makes this massive shift so deeply profound is that it isn't just about external events happening around you. It is about a complete internal balance being restored. The absolute truth you now carry inside you is far heavier than any dirty weapon they ever tried to use against you. It is not just hard proof of what they did to you. It is living, breathing evidence that you simply cannot be destroyed by their cheap tactics. That specific kind of survival absolutely terrifies people who heavily thrive on having total control. They don't actually fear your anger. They fear your very existence. They are terrified by the simple fact that you are still here, you are still standing tall, you are still speaking your truth, and that all of their dark strategies completely failed to erase you. This is exactly why you are completely untouchable right now. It is not because you are quietly hiding or because you have magically become invisible. It is because their very own corruption has made them incredibly vulnerable. They simply cannot move the way they once did. They cannot threaten you anymore without immediately drawing massive attention right back to themselves. They cannot try to bury you without completely burying their own terrible crimes in the process. The arrogant hunter has officially become trapped by the very same snares they so carefully set for you. The heavy fear has completely shifted camps, and that shift is 100% irreversible. The beautiful power you once thought you had lost was actually never gone. It was just patiently waiting for this exact moment to arrive. And right now, as they violently tremble under the heavy weight of your absolute truth, you proudly stand in the exact position they once held. You do not stand there as a predator, but as living, breathing proof that their dark reign of terror is completely over. Number 14. You survived both the crime and the cover-up, and that is the absolute real miracle here. The initial crime was specifically meant to deeply wound your life, but the massive cover-up was intentionally designed to completely erase your spirit. One violently strikes the physical body, while the other slowly poisons the mind. That is the unspoken, devastating cruelty of these specific kinds of attacks. They are absolutely never satisfied with just hurting you once. They want to completely destroy any possibility of you ever speaking out, ever finding healing, or ever being believed by anyone again. The crime all by itself was completely devastating, but the heavy, suffocating silence they built all around it was perfectly engineered to finish the job. That is exactly why your incredible survival is not just deeply impressive, it is fully miraculous. Most normal people think of survival as just barely scraping through a bad situation, but what you actually endured was a highly coordinated assault on multiple levels all at the exact same time. You weren't just physically or emotionally harmed. You were aggressively gaslit, completely discredited, and totally isolated from everyone. You were left holding a massive amount of pain that absolutely no one else would even acknowledge. You were forced to live under a completely manufactured, fake narrative that was meant to make you deeply doubt your very own memory. They didn't just want to harm you, they wanted to completely erase your entire sense of self. And yet, look at you. Here you are. You didn't just survive the deep wound. You survived the heavy toxic silence that was supposed to completely suffocate you. That is exactly where the true, real miracle sits. Not only did you keep on breathing, but you kept your complete clarity. You kept enough of your beautiful spirit completely intact so that you could instantly recognize the absolute truth when it finally surfaced. You absolutely didn't lose your capacity to call out exactly what happened. You didn't lose that burning fire inside that pushed you to keep searching for real answers, even when the entire world was screaming at you to stop. That specific kind of incredible endurance simply cannot be explained away by good luck or a random coincidence. It is rock-solid evidence of something much greater actively preserving your life. This is exactly why your survival is so much more than just a personal victory. It is a living, breathing contradiction to their entire evil plan. The initial crime was supposed to bury you in the dirt. The massive cover-up was supposed to make absolutely sure you never rose up again. But instead, you confidently walked right through both of them, and you came out on the other side proudly carrying the very evidence they desperately tried to destroy. You carried yourself, your powerful voice, your clear memory, and your undeniable story. That is the true, raw power of divine preservation. It doesn't always prevent the terrible wound from happening, but it perfectly shields the core essence of a person. It ensures that even after a brutal attack, they can still rise up, speak the truth, and completely expose what was hidden in the dark. You are absolutely not just a simple survivor of a bad event. You are the sole survivor of an entire corrupt system. And your very existence is the exact proof that they never, ever wanted the world to see. What you have bravely walked through was not just a simple crime. It was a massive, highly coordinated attempt to completely erase you from your very own life. It was a coordinated, dark effort. A bitter ex, a crooked lawyer, and a dirty cop were all woven together, not by random chance, but by a deeply shared fear of the powerful truth you carry inside you. They didn't just cause you harm. They tried their hardest to make that harm completely invisible. They built fake shadow trials, buried hard evidence, falsified official reports, and rewrote timelines, genuinely thinking that their forced silence could somehow be stronger than your will to survive. Yet here you proudly stand today. You stand not just as a silent witness, but as living, breathing proof that their dark scheme has completely failed. Every single revelation that is unfolding right now, the hidden documents coming to light, the dark alliances being totally exposed, and the perfect timing of this massive investigation proves something so much deeper. You were never ever alone in this fight. There is a much higher order standing right behind this perfect timing. It is a divine intelligence pulling the dark curtain all the way back at the exact moment they truly thought they were completely untouchable. You didn't just endure a terrible crime. You fully endured the massive cover-up, the aggressive gaslighting, the vicious character assassination, and the nasty public smearing. And you absolutely didn't just survive it all. You came out on the other side shining with deep clarity, massive strength, and a powerful story that absolutely no one can ever silence. This specific moment isn't just about your personal vindication. It is a massive turning point for absolutely everything they built on dark lies. Their screaming denials are louder than ever right now, strictly because their raw fear is so much louder than yours ever was. The arrogant hunters have officially become the hunted. Everything that was hidden in the dark has been violently dragged right into the blazing light. The hard evidence they truly thought would stay buried forever is now rapidly rising to the surface, and the absolute truth you embody stands so much taller than their corrupt institutions. Exactly what they tried so hard to destroy in secret has now become their total public undoing. You are absolutely not only the strong survivor of a crime, you are the living evidence they could never successfully erase. You are the walking testimony their dirty hands could never rewrite. Your very existence is the final receipt, and the whole world is finally reading it out loud. So, as the heavy curtain finally drops on their fake performance, hold your head up high. You didn't just outlast their dirty, cheap tactics. You completely expose them to the light, and by doing so, you have proven something so much larger, that absolutely no dark alliance of corruption can ever outlast a beautiful life that has been divinely preserved for the truth. If this message shook your spirit or completely opened your eyes today, please do not keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share this message to let others finally see the real truth. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never ever miss another powerful revelation that exposes the dark lies and empowers the chosen ones. Your strong voice truly matters in this world. Join the movement, speak up boldly, and shine your bright light on exactly what they tried so hard to bury. God bless you. Amen.